David, surely there must be a screenplay in this book somewhere.
Oh, I'm glad you think so. Yes, there could be. There are some rather interesting things in it. Because when I was asked to do it and began to think about it, it's not often you actually go back and you think about your life in detail, you know, and a lot of things I had really forgotten about and had to be quite sure in my own mind that they were in fact true and that I wasn't imagining them. But no, I've had some interesting experiences, certainly, yes.
Your childhood, putting it mildly, was very colourful.
It was unusual in that I was, well, I suppose the most significant fact is that my father was 63 when I was born. I was the child of a second marriage. So he was an elderly man, more like a grandfather than a father. And he had a very profound effect on me because he was a self-made man. He had left school when he was 12. He used to swim in the Heathcote River to get clean with his 11 other brothers and sisters. His father was a shepherd, and he was a self-made man in the sense that he was a very astute businessman. But he had no formal education, and yet the house was filled with books, and the classic books, you know, The Last of the Mohicans, all Dickens books, which he read all the time. And that was the first, well, the major connection I had with literature was through him. It always struck me odd that a man who hadn't had any formal education was actually such a voracious reader.
Educated by life, you may say?
I suppose so, yes. I mean, he was a very inquisitive man, there's no question of that. But of course, my life was shaped to a large extent by the fact that he was old and he was not well. And he died when I was quite young. And well, I missed him, yes, yeah.
And there's a lovely line, when you were born, he said, if I'm not around, I won't be around for David's high school years, but I definitely don't want him to go to Christ College.
Yes, I'm not quite sure about that. I mean, I don't know if it was he had a particular aversion to Christ College. He wasn't a religious man, and of course I was chosen to be a chorister in the Christchurch Cathedral Choir, and I think that's what prompted that remark of his, that although he didn't disapprove, but it wasn't the sort of thing that he thought I should be getting involved in. Because he was very, very prominent in rugby circles, he was the chairman of the New Zealand Rugby Union for a period of time, he thought that I should concentrate on playing rugby rather than singing. But the ban on going to Christ College, I don't quite know where that came from. My brothers, my half-brothers, had all gone to to boys' high school, and it was expected that I would go, which created a huge turmoil in my life, because from the rather sheltered environment of a preparatory school, an English-style school with a lot of English teachers, I went into this huge secondary school. I spoke French, and I had a smattering of Latin, and I came in the fourth form, as it then was, and they didn't know what to do with me. And a master there, who was revered by other pupils, who I don't have much time for at all, asked me, he said, "What are your maths like?" And I said, oh, I was honest, I said, "They're terrible." "Right, we'll put you in the woodwork class for you to settle in." And I said, "But I speak French." No, we'll give you a chance to settle in. You know. Well, the woodwork class, they were men, they weren't boys, you know. And I was dumped into a world that was completely foreign to me entirely. Utterly, they talked in a language I didn't understand about things I didn't really want to discuss.
One language, though, that we can definitely say that you are well versed in is comedy. Can we fast forward to the 4th of July, 1977? Why was that day so auspicious in your life?
Well, it was the first screening of a show called A Week of It, which was it was my brainchild, I suppose. It was the thing that I wanted to do. And it was the first outing of this new type of show, which had never been done before, and which the authorities or the executives were somewhat nervous about because of the nature of the material. You see, up to that point, attempts at New Zealand comedy on television had been not all that successful. But our show, A Week of It, dives straight in directly into a political context. We were the first show ever to lampoon public figures and say, "I am so-and-so," and I am now going to make a number of stupid statements. I think the very first thing that was said on the show was from Ken Ellis, who was my co-host, and Ken's a very old friend of mine, as were all the guys who worked on the show, we have a picture, an exclusive picture of the Prime Minister, Robert Muldoon, getting a lei. And of course he just said it like that. And everyone sort of went, what? And we had a picture of a young woman putting a lei around his neck. And then we said, and now we can show you what Bill Rowling, who was the leader of the opposition at the time, what Bill Rowling is like in bed. And we had a shot of Bill Rowling in bed. Now, I mean, it sounds a bit silly and trite, but
it was groundbreaking.
It was. We were actually saying things about public figures that had never been said before, or making jokes about them in a way that the public had never seen. So it was a groundbreaking in that sense, yeah. And I think a lot of people got a bit surprised by it. But my argument was always that newspapers have got cartoons. That's an accepted part of their tradition. Television should have its version, and that was what our show was.
Music was a significant part of your shows, wasn't it?
It was, because we had Jon Gadsby, who was a very talented musician, and people like A.K. Grant, the late A.K. Grant, and Chris McPhail are very good writers of lyrics. And so we began to do lots of song parodies because we like to do that. And they're an interesting way of commenting on things, on events, other than doing a sketch about them. It carries with it some inherent risks, though, because obviously if you do a song parody, you're changing the words of an existing song, and you're not allowed to do that. And if you write a new song, it's not a parody of an old song, do you understand? You know? And a lot of the joy of parodies is that people recognize the tune, but the words are different. So we had to be very, very careful, and we nearly got dumped in at once, because I got a letter from the estate of Cole Porter saying that they believed that one of his songs had been used, and they accepted that it was probably an oversight on our part, but the next time anything like that happened, we would get a bill for $1 million. So,
put that in the budget. So what did the political figures think of you actually taking the Michael out of them on screen?
there were two reactions. One was some of them were offended by it, by what we said about them. Others were offended when they weren't mentioned. Tom Scott has always told me that, the cartoonist, that he could do a terrible cartoon of a person, of a political figure, and the first person to ring up to ask for a copy of it was the secretary of the person in the cartoon. So people would get critical of us if they weren't mentioned, if they weren't lampooned on the show, you know. It indicated that they weren't important. Mm. I think the other response, there was the public's response, because at that particular period of time, and in the years that followed, Sir Robert Muldoon was in fact a very powerful and a very dangerous figure, and he genuinely frightened people. Mm. And he was not afraid to say things about people publicly which were quite outrageous, and not afraid to destroy careers or reputations. And this was an opportunity for people to laugh at him, but not be endangered by him, you know. That they would say things like, "That's exactly what I felt about him," you know, what you did. So it was a bit of a, well, like all comedy, it's a safety valve.
What are you most proud of, David?
Oh, well, as I say in the book, and this, people may think this is a bit trite, but it's not. I'm most proud of my family, you know. My achievements, I'm obviously very happy with what I've done and pleased that I've had the opportunity to entertain people, because there's a great joy in making people laugh. Mm. You know, it's a reward in itself. The money's quite good too, but it is, you know, it is I suppose, a skill that I have, and it's fun to use it. I think, as I say, I think one of the things that I am proud of is the fact that in these years now where I'm no longer on television, where I tend to spend all my time on the stage, or which is my first love, really, is that the number of people, and people of your age, you know, who come up to me now and say things like that they had such fun because they would sit with their parents and watch television, watch a comedy show together. And that's a form of television that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, and that was part of my intention was to not bring families together in a social sense. You know, I wasn't a social innovator, I was a satirist. But I just liked the idea that the kids would be allowed to stay up late one night with their parents to watch a show together.
Now, can I ask something of you, David? We're about to go to a commercial break, but I think the last word should really be with Sir Robert Muldoon, so can you look over at camera 2 and maybe lead us out?
I haven't done this for a long time, you understand, but I don't think, I suppose you never forget it.
It's been very nice talking to you all. You look as though you're having a good time. Well, I'm here to put a stop to all that.